Hello, everyone. Welcome to another podcast. It's Ben Lister here. How are you doing today? Welcome along to episode 34 of the BL and Friends podcast. Right, let's crack on. As you know, each week I have my friends as guests to talk about their hobbies, their jobs, their careers. So let's crack on with this week's guest. It's broadcaster from all different radio stations and a mentor to many, the one and only Rod Hardesty. Hey, Rod, welcome along.
Hiya, Ben, you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you, sir. How are you?
Oh, I'm always fine, absolutely fine.
Excellent. 5 questions about your broadcast career, if that's okay?
Yeah, they go back quite a while, so I hope I don't bore you.
You won't bore me. Let's go for it. Are you ready to rumble in the jungle?
I'm ready.
Let's go for it. Question 1. Where did you start your broadcast career?
I started in Blackburn, Lancashire, back in 1975. In fact, I can even remember the date. It was the 3rd of October. I'd seen a programme on the TV about volunteers for various organisations, and one of them featured Warrington Hospital Radio, and they were looking for volunteers. Warrington was a bit far for me to go, so I looked and found the nearest one, which was about 20 miles away at the time, in Blackburn. So I contacted them, and on the 3rd of October 1975, I went down there for the first time. 4 years later, I'd worked my way up to being chairman of the organisation. Then in 1982, a new commercial radio station came to town, Red Rose Radio, that was based in Preston. And I was lucky enough to get first of all, a part-time gig, just driving programmes at weekend, which eventually led to a full-time job.
Nice. Yeah, there's also lots of good radio stations out there as well. Red Rose is a good one because it was owned by the late great John Myers was involved.
Well, he didn't actually own it. He worked for the station for a while. It was actually owned by a consortium headed by a man called Owen Oyston. He ran a chain of estate agents in the area, and also he was forming a cable TV company, which that didn't really materialize. But the Oyston Estates was a big name in the area back then, and he was the man that put the money in and got the people together to form the station. John actually joined it a couple of years later, I think around about 1984 he joined.
Nice. And what was your favourite part about, what was your favourite part about being part of the station?
It was like a family, quite honestly. The staff there we all got on very well together, quite honestly. And it was new to the area. The only opposition we had was the BBC. And really, we were only in direct competition on Saturdays with sport. Their music was slightly different to ours. So we all got on together really well. And it was a pleasure to go to work, even though I did quite a lot of overnights.
Were you in the church in Preston?
That's right. It was a converted church, St. Paul's Church. It was vacated about 10 years earlier. And during that time, lead had been taken from the roof, and the place was quite a mess. The company bought it for about £40,000. It's recently been sold now that the radio station's vacated it. It's recently been sold for, I think, about half a million. I'm not quite sure. A heck of a lot more. Once again, I'm afraid the lead was taken from the roof as well, and the new owners had to spend a fortune redoing that. But yeah, it was a derelict church, needed a lot doing to it. They paid 40 grand for it, and spent about a year or so, as far as I'm aware, renovating it. And it was very tastefully done, quite honestly. It was a really nice place to be in. I spent many a time on my own doing overnights in there. And people say they didn't like it at night because it had a ghost. Well, I spent about five of my 12 years doing overnights, and I was the only person in the building, and I never saw anything. Maybe I frightened them off.
Nice. Question 2. Who were your broadcasting inspirations when you were starting out?
Right, well, going back a long time, I was always a fan of Ray Moore, who did the breakfast show on Radio 2. And then, of course, Ken Bruce Later, of course, I started listening to John Myers, and in fact, it was Jeremy Vine that described John Myers as the most important man in broadcasting since Marconi. He had some great ideas. So I would say those three as much as anything. I don't think John would mind me saying that he did things differently to a lot of people. He started off doing a country show on BBC Cumbria. He hadn't got a clue about country music, but he didn't tell them that. And I think he won an award for it too, believe it or not. But it was his, his personality on air. He didn't like doing what he was told. I'm sure, as I say, if he was around today, he wouldn't mind me saying that. And his boss at the time, Keith Macklin, was a church-going Christian. He used to present a religious program, network program called the Sunday Quiz before your time. That it came from Yorkshire TV and went national. Keith presented that, so he didn't like John being smutty. So he told John, "You're not to be smutty on air." But John comes on air and says, "The boss tells me I'm not to be smutty." And one thing led to another, and it ended up with John getting the push from Red Rose, would you believe? But then as time went on, Keith got a job board of television doing sport, remained at Red Rose just doing the sport, the commentary, rugby league commentary. So he was just a freelance then. Soon after that, John Myers came back in a higher position and soon became program controller. And then, of course, when Keith Macklin's contract came up for renewal, he had to go to John to have it renewed. Fortunately, John was a nice guy and renewed his contract. But yeah, he worked his way up, did John? Great guy.
He also, as well, because I was listening to his bio on David Lloyd's thing the other day, and I never knew that he was heavily involved. The radio stations always asked him for proposals, and he always got the proposals approved by the radio bodies.
Yeah. Radio Authority first, then Ofcom. Well, they knew they could trust him. John knew radio inside out. There's so many people run radio stations that have been solicitors, accountants, we call them the soup brigade. John was a broadcaster all the way up, and they knew that they could trust him because he knew how to run a radio station. So yeah, he got a lot from the Radio Authority.
Yeah,
and Ofcom.
As I say, he's a legend, and bits of his son, I think, are part of him still.
Yeah, Scott's followed very much in his father's footsteps, and he's doing very well at the moment in London, producing a breakfast show at one station, and he's not finished climbing the ladder. Without doubt, he'll move up. He's got his dad's personality. He's the sort of person that can manage people. Management's a tricky thing. You've got to be on the side of the person you're managing, and then you get support. John was like that, and I'm sure Scott's going to be just the same. He's already done very well for his age.
So is his father's son then?
Yeah. Yeah.
As we say, yeah.
Mm.
Brilliant person, because I remember him when he was at the ship at Capital Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brilliant job he did there. When it was Galaxy with people like Dan O'Connell and others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Question 3, what is your favourite part about the job?
The favourite part of the job, I would really say producing and editing. In later years, they used to send me out interviewing people for sport, footballers, football managers, etc. And I really, as much as I enjoy sport, I wasn't an expert in it. So I had to do a lot of work researching the when they last played this team, etc., and what the score was then. So that wasn't easy. But when it came to editing programs and producing them in the studio, that was my forte. I enjoyed doing that. Of course, I'm retired now, so I don't do that anymore.
Where was your last gig?
My last one was at what used to be Real Radio, which is now Heart, when it was bought by Global and they turned it into Heart, they didn't require sport. So I, like quite a few other people, were subject, well, we weren't needed anymore. So they, as most of it, of course, comes from London now. A lot of our journalists, they've done all right. They're working in other stations and even on regional television. There's some of our journalists now doing very well. One is even fronting the main regional news on Tyne Tees. So yeah, they've done all right, but one or two have had to go and get different careers. I was 62 then, so of course I had a payoff, so I was able to pay my mortgage off. So I didn't do too bad out of it, quite honestly.
Brilliant.
I was lucky, very lucky.
Brilliant.
I'd still do bits. My sort of music I like is classical music, so I present a classical show for community stations each week. But apart from that, I do very little now for radio. But I'm 73, so I suppose it's time to take a back seat.
Yeah, I agree. You need to take some time for yourself.
Aye.
And just focus on the things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So, next question 4. How has COVID affected your life and line of work?
In line of work, I wouldn't say it affected me at all because I have a studio in my house. I record my program in the house. So I just carried on doing it from home and didn't have any problems. I didn't need to go to the station. I could either do it down the line or I could pre-record it. So that way, as far as my career is concerned, I wasn't affected. I was affected by getting a dose of COVID, but that didn't really affect my broadcasting.
Yeah. Yep. Last question on my list, then your picture, and then you're free to go. What advice would you give to young aspiring broadcasters who are starting out?
Well, it's quite an insecure career, especially commercial radio. So I would say try to get some other trade in the first place. Getting in radio, hospital radio, community radio is a great ladder to get involved with. But of course, when you get to the real thing, is maybe not quite as much fun, but it's still good. So community radio is a great thing to get involved with, hospital radio. And even if, there are stations that allow you to go in and help out, like in the old days, a lot of people used to go in stations just to help out, to get the feet under the table. There's many a person got a career in radio through that. But of course, local radio now, there's not as many stations around. Most of them are based in London, and there's just like the odd program coming from the regions. So yeah, go to hospital radio or commercial radio, community radio, if you're wanting to get involved. But as I say, make sure you've got something else to fall back on.
Brilliant, yeah. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us, Rod.
It's a pleasure, mate. All the best to you, Ben.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure. Hope you all learned something. Thank you for joining me today. Right, that's it for today. We're out of time. So please give it up one more time for Rod Hardesty.
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 Yeah.
Thank you very much for watching and listening. This will be available on my wix.com website and my YouTube channel. So thank you very much for all them. And as I always say, that we're out of time, and that's a wrap.